Hi everyone, this is Joseph from English with Joseph. Welcome again to another moment of shadow and light entertainment. Well, you'll be pleased to know that Avi will be with me later on this evening, so I'll be recording something with him. That is, of course, if I can get any sense out of him. You know how he likes to talk. So we'll be having a little get together later on today. This morning I would like to talk to you about contractions. This is something which is quite misunderstood in the world of English grammar. I've noticed that in a few of my lessons with pupils I've been asking them about contractions, and they seem to think that contractions are only ever used in written English. That is not the case. Contractions are always used in spoken English, even in formal situations. The only time contractions are not used, I suppose, really would be for emphasis. Okay, so I suppose you're wondering, what's a contraction? Okay, so to begin, a contraction is, how can I describe it? A contraction is when you take two words and you shorten them into one. And it's very common amongst certain expressions in English. For example, I am can easily become I'm. I will can become I'll. So I am going out, I'm going out, I'm going to use the computer is I am going to use the computer. So when you shorten it, it becomes I'm. There's all different types of contractions. I recommend, if you want to do an in-depth study, that you have a look around the internet. There's a wonderful page on the enchantedlearning.com site on contractions, which was given to me some time ago by Catherine. Thank you, Catherine. And I often use that when I'm teaching students about contractions. Okay, there's all different types of contractions. They're very easy, but you should be using them. And the reason why you should be using them is because if you don't, you'll sound like a robot. I am going out. And it works in well with our other discussion, which is about linking and blending. We should always be using linking and blending. I'm going out is very different from saying I am going out. Okay, so we've spoken about linking and blending before. We've also spoken about pitch and tone. Hello, I'm going out. Or if you say, yeah, I'm going out. Same words, but very different meanings based upon your breathing and your pitch and tone. And as I'm always saying, English people, we use the words, but our body language often gives you a different idea, okay, of what's happening. And this is what you have to learn to read. The next time you're listening to a news broadcast or people speaking, this is the kind of thing that you want to begin to notice. I've been watching the American presidential elections in America, and one thing I'm very struck by is politicians generally don't tell you how they feel. If you listen to a speech by President Obama, you will see that he's very clear and speaking like this, with very little pitch and tone. So you can't read him. You can't really know what he's thinking. But in the elections, it's a different story. The politicians are, if I get elected, I will do this and this and this and make the country so much better. And that's one way, perhaps, in which our language is abused. To keep people down, you can communicate without emotion, without pitch and tone. And the leaders do this all the time. David Cameron is also expert at doing this, as was Tony Blair. The downside of this, of course, is the effect that it has on us, because we don't really know what they're thinking. And why should we? Because the person in charge isn't the person who makes decisions. He's just the face of the government, So I suppose he's representative of the system, which is without face. It's very complex and it's a very interesting issue. I suppose it doesn't really fall within the category of language learning. I suppose it falls more into the category of linguistics. But wherever it belongs, I find it fascinating. And I also find it fascinating how psychology and the way we use the language, how those two things are connected. One way in which those two things are connected is very, very interesting, is the idea of possession. If you walk past a shop in England, you might see a sign saying, "We have bread." So, translated, that means come in and buy our bread. We have bread. The bread is ours and we will sell it to you. However, here in Spain, if you walk past a shop window, it won't say "we have bread," it'll say "there's bread here, there's bread inside," written in Spanish, of course. But if you think of the consequences of those two things, they give you two very different messages. And when I uncover things like this, I'm always very struck by the way that we use English as a language. Very, very interesting. Another example might be in Scotland and Ireland. We don't say "I have a headache." We say, "Oh, I have a terrible head upon me. I have a headache upon me. Oh, there's a sickness upon me." It's not too common to hear it now, but in my grandparents' generation it was very common. To say "there's a sickness upon me" also means that sickness can leave at any point. So it's very interesting. Whereas if you say "I have a headache," you're taking ownership of it, and it's yours. And it's really, I'm always fascinated how we use the language in that way and what messages it gives us. Okay, well, that's really all I wanted to say today, but before I go, I want to give you just a quick refresher on this idea of contractions. Contractions is when you shorten two words together, such as "I am" becomes "I'm", "I will" becomes "I'll". It gets a bit more complicated with "I have", which becomes "I've". And the reason why it gets a bit complicated is because you have to remember this can also be used with possession. For example, "I've two dogs", "I have two dogs". "I've been to the beach", "I have been to the beach". So there's a bit of confusion there, especially if you want to say something like, "I haven't been around because I have had an illness". "I've had an illness". "I have had an illness". And the past tense of that is I'd. Yeah. "I'd been outside". Something to study more. I really recommend that you go to the Enchanted Learning site and do a Google search on their site for the list of contractions. Alternatively, put into Google Enchanted Learning Contractions and you'll see it. Beautiful site. Absolutely beautiful. Beautiful. For those of you who don't know, feedback is always welcome. You can see my new website at englishwithjosephblog.wordpress.com. There's links to it on my Facebook, on my Twitter, on my Dailymotion videos if you look above this video. So feel free to interact with me and give me feedback, good or bad. If you have any particular things of the English language you would like me to talk about, please do tell me, and I'll be happy to try to cover that in one of our daily sessions. Okay, so ways of communicating with me: facebook.com, English with Joseph, Twitter, McTaggartJ7, my own blog, which is englishwithjosephblog.wordpress.com. You have my Amazon books, which you can access. I think there should be links in all of my other sites. There's also a site here on Dailymotion as well. There's books there in all aspects of English grammar. If you could have a look at those, if there's any particular ones that you like, I'm happy to send them to you free of charge. Just send me an email, leave me a Daily Motion comment, and please do share these videos as much as you can. I'm going to try to continue doing them daily. I'm not sure how practical that is or even how useful that is. We're slowly getting good numbers looking at these, but if I don't get good numbers looking at these over the coming months, there's no point in really continuing it. But I will be doing it at least twice or 3 times a week anyway. But for the moment, I really hope to continue doing this daily. Okay, so please do drop me a note, anything you would like to see, and of course you can always book lessons with me on italki.com. Go to my site and you can see all my links in one place, okay, including my favorite dictionary for English learners. I can definitely recommend the Webster's Dictionary. I spoke about it yesterday. There's links in all my sites as well. So I hope that's of help to you. Okay, so until we meet again, I wish you a very good day, and I'll see you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.